Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Review. I'm Phil Hargis. Alongside me is Robbie Castro. Robbie, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's been a little bit.
And the operative word is football, Robbie. It's football season again. The collective bargaining agreements, the owners and the players have come to terms. We're ready for football season again.
This is great. I mean, we were from the last. I remember the last show we did together. Seems like eternity. We just couldn't wait to break it down. We have a lot to go over. A big season ahead of us. A lot of changes, but I really think that this is going to be one of the hardest drafts to conduct because of the different players on each team, but actually could be the most fun. So let's give it a go.
If you had a draft today, you wouldn't even know what players are on all the teams. And furthermore, since players haven't had their offseason drills and their camps and their calculated schedules, this is going to be a complete crapshoot for the teams going into the regular season.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the mystique of the NFL. That's what makes it so great. Is week in and week out, you get results like this. And honestly, when we were doing that mock draft the other day, you just never know. And that's just the one thing. Like last season, it was kind of predictable. Everything kind of fell into place. But this season, there's a huge question mark. So we'll see, and we'll try to give the viewers out there, maybe some answers on how to solve these types of problems.
There's a lot of tough questions out there to be answered, but to help answer those questions, we have Doug Cook on the phone. Doug, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you again, as always.
Hey, well, I'm not sure if you can see me or not because there's no camera on me, but it's good to hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are, Doug. Robbie and I did a mock draft last weekend. He came over. Because of our lowly little lives, nothing better to do on a Saturday afternoon. We decided to sit around and do a mock draft on our good friend CBS Sportsline's website there. The results, as he said, were a little interesting, I'd say. The most interesting thing about these mock drafts is that people draft them, they do their first 5 or 6 rounds, and then just put it on auto draft the rest of the draft. To me, the most important part of doing one of these mock drafts is getting the practice and finding out where these players are getting drafted in the second half of these drafts. I mean, that's where you make or break your fantasy teams.
I think you're right. I think the biggest problems that we saw early on were, a lot of running backs being bunched in. It's, there's a lot of value. There's some great value out there in the first 5 rounds. And if you can get the player that you're trying to reach for in a later round, go do that. Don't reach for a player that you can get in the second or third round if he is available. So these mock drafts, I mean, it's good to get them over with. And it's good to research them before your actual draft, just because you get to see who falls where and who might go where. But don't ever reach for, like we saw, a tight end early or a quarterback early, because the value that we got out of our mock draft was second out of 12 teams, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Doug, have you done any mock drafts yet down there in the Sunshine State?
No, I haven't been doing any drafts. I've been monitoring some of them and monitoring the ADPs and basically laughing at it as we go along.
Okay, well, here, let's get right into it, guys. Experts have been doing these mock drafts. I know SiriusXM Fantasy Radio, those guys did a mock draft over the weekend, a celebrity draft. And now the guys from CBS Sportsline, they did a draft just today, earlier today, on Thursday. This is August 4th. They did a mock draft. A bunch of the guys over there at CBS Sportsline. I know that's a website that I've been using for a very, very long time. Those guys do cover the NFL news pretty well. But they did a mock draft today, so I think we should go ahead and take a look at what these experts are doing, see if they're doing things that we would do, if there's other things out there that we can learn from this draft. I mean, it's still a month from the season, but so it's tough to draft that far out. Let's bear that in mind and give them some slack here. But let's go ahead and break it down and see how these guys did. First of all, a question for you guys right off the bat. The top 3 picks seem to be coming down to the 3 same guys. Arian and I'm going to start with Robbie, Doug. Let's go with Arian Foster, Adrian Peterson, or Chris Johnson. I mean, I know Robbie last year you're high on Chris Johnson. Are you going back to him this year, or do you like one of these other guys better?
Nah, I kind of like Adrian Peterson just because the quarterback situation in Minnesota is so fickle right now. It's up in the air. You don't know if they're going to start the rookie Christian Ponder or they're going to go to the old reliable veteran Donovan McNabb. McNabb just got placed on the team not too long ago. So, he needs to learn the playbook really, really quick. And Adrian Peterson's that easy answer, especially inside the 10-yard line. I know the Minnesota Vikings are going to have a lot of chances to score this season. They probably won't be able to throw the ball because they lost Sidney Rice. And it's like, hey, who's their wide receivers? So I think Adrian Peterson right there, you look at him, you see that he's going to give you a lot of points, especially in a lot of touches inside the red zone. So I like Adrian Peterson there. Arian Foster is still a mystery to me. The jury's still out. I know he played with he said a bum leg all of last year and still put up the production that he did. I just don't see him continuing it over. I know Doug doesn't like Arian Foster, so I'd go Chris Johnson too, and then maybe Arian Foster, 3, 4, maybe even 5.
Doug, rank those top 3 guys for me: Arian Foster, Adrian Peterson, and Chris Johnson.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and use some statistics to back up, my opinion here, because that's what I like to do. But I think Arian Foster is a mistake to use your number 1 pick. In fact, I wouldn't draft him in the first round at all, and I'll tell you why. I say this year after year. If you look at my 1,500 and up running backs chart, which I brought up last year, talked to a lot of people about it, including the supposed experts, not the ones from CBS that I know of anyway, but other, even then, they denied the statistics here that every other running back that had run for 2,000 yards ran for approximately 1,070 yards and 6.5 touchdowns the following season. They just can't follow up that level of protection. It's the same thing happens to all the rest of them from 1,500 yards up. There's always, not always, but statistically, on average, there's a significant decrease in production. For example, the 1,600 to 1,700 yard rushers average 1,150 and 10 touchdowns the next year. Okay, so that's what we're looking at for Arian Foster. And that 10 touchdowns average includes 2 guys that actually improved and had one of the most monstrous, fantasy seasons of all time, like Sean Alexander's top season and Priest Holmes, where each of them scored 27 rushing touchdowns that year. So if you think that he's that next guy, one of that top 10% out of the 20 guys that ran for 1,600 before, if you think Foster is that guy, then by all means, go ahead and draft number 1. Otherwise, you're probably looking at 1,150 yards and 10 touchdowns, which I think you want to get more than that out of your number 1 pick.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, let's just think back even to recent memory, guys. Like last year, everybody was on Chris Johnson. Robbie was on him. I think he learned from his mistake last year because he said he liked Adrian Peterson better this year. He was coming off a career season, and it was so hard to follow up. And then the year before that, let's figure that Adrian Peterson was the consensus number 1 draft pick overall, and he faltered the year after that. So, even in recent memory, these guys do struggle after having a very tough, after having basically what would be a career or one of the top 10, rushing seasons of all time.
No, and it's not just a statistical anomaly. I mean, there's a real good reason for this. After a running back goes hog wild for 1,600, 1,700, 1,800 yards, a la Chris Johnson, Adrian Peterson, or whatever, all the defenses do the next year is target him. They say, this is the catalyst for the offense. We're going to work on stopping him in our game against that running back. And it's almost impossible for the running back to repeat that type of performance the next year.
He gets solved, as Doug and I have been saying on the show for the last 10 years. Let's move on to the later part of the first round. After those 3 guys, it seems like a couple of top guys there would be Ray Rice and Jamaal Charles. How do you guys feel about those 2?
I like Jamaal Charles. In that offense, he fits in so well. He's one of those guys that really stretch the defense. And if they're going to stop the run, Dwayne Bowe, and now with the addition of Steve Preston in Kansas City, is really going to just amplify that offense. So I like Jamaal Charles in this spot right here because he's so sneaky. You can use him out of the backfield. He can not only can he catch, he can run. You're getting Dexter McCluster back from injury. There's just so many intangibles on that. Mawahi, tight end for Kansas City, was a security blanket for Matt Castle. So I like Jamaal Charles. The jury's still out on Ray Rice, I think, because that Ray Rice is one of those guys. And you talk about consistency, Doug. He's just been very inconsistent the last 3 years. After he had that awesome playoff game against New England, so I really don't like Ray Rice that much, but I like myself some Jamaal Charles.
Yeah, and Doug, here's a question I got for you. I see that Jeff Tobin was faced after Andre Johnson went there in the first round. He decided to go with a guy like Roddy White over potential running back studs like Michael Turner, Maurice Jones-Drew, or Darren McFadden. Do you think the Roddy White was a good choice there, or are you going to go with the running back?
No, and I think the ADP says it there. It's that he kind of reached for it. That's an ADP of 14 in the first round. I guess I'm sure he has his reasons, but he probably actually could have got him in the second round. There's a possibility of that. And he could have taken, somebody, one of the proven running backs instead. And what I would say about Ray Rice and Jamaal Charles, I think the jury's still out on both of them. I think either of them could end up, especially Rice, I think could end up finally having that real breakthrough season and finally, remember, he's never even run for over 1,400 yards, so he could be one of those guys we're mentioning next year that's coming off a career year to avoid. And then the only other thing I would say is that Jamal Charles he's still splitting carries with Tom Jones, and LaShawn McCoy's probably going to start splitting carries with Lonnie Brown this year. So that's their own problem that they have to deal with. They're making a shot away from them.
Yeah, I mean, with LaShawn McCoy is in a weird situation in a way. I mean, he's a guy that's definitely much more valuable in a point per reception league because he catches those balls out of the backfield. And what's just going to be a crazy offense over there in Philadelphia. Let's move on to the second round. And let's do one more thing here. So, Robbie, I guess it's your turn. Let's move over to this guy, Peter Madden. He decided to go after that awesome year that Aaron Rodgers had. Is it now time to take a quarterback in the first round, or are you going to hold off a couple more rounds?
You know what? I've never really been a firm believer of taking a quarterback in the first round, only because, the level of play. I mean, you look at the top total points between the top and the top guys. There's really not that much leeway. But with a running back and a wide receiver, you're looking at 100 to 200 point differences. That's a drastic total. That's a difference between a win and a loss right there. I honestly would stay away from a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers. He wins the Super Bowl. You gotta love him. I think he's the first quarterback taken. But would I take him 11th overall? Probably not. I'd see if I can go maybe quarterback. Maybe a running back or wide receiver there, depending on because if you're in a 12-team league, it's going to come right back to you. So I want to stockpile as many running backs or wide receivers as possible.
Well, let me caveat this too. The scoring system that these guys use, it is 6-point touchdowns, regardless of pass, rush, or receiving. So you are getting 6 points for passing touchdown. Doug, does that affect your decision to take a quarterback in the first round?
First round, I don't know. I still don't think I can pull the trigger in the first round on a quarterback, especially the fact that, we're going to get to round 2, and the next quarterback isn't taken until towards the end of round 2. And if you look at that handful of guys at the top, Brady, Manning, Brees, and Rodgers, you're going to, if you want to draft one early, wait for one of those guys to get drafted and then get in on one. You don't have to pull the trigger on to be the first quarterback draft.
Yeah, so that was one of the interesting situations that came up was that one of the drafters, it was Jamie Eisenberg, had the opportunity to take Tom Brady over Peyton Manning. Was that the correct decision? And that was at the end of round 3.
Yeah. Well, I think Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are just or Drew Brees. All of those, I think, are legitimate first quarterbacks to be taken. I don't know why you have to. The fantasy players you'll find are upset with everything that happened last year. They will pay, for the most part, will pay no attention to what happened the year before that or the year before that. And as a matter of fact, all these other quarterbacks are statistically, probably better than Aaron Rodgers over the last 2 or 3 years. So, it all depends. I think they're all pretty much going to be very similar in points, like Robbie said, the top 5 quarterbacks. So there's no reason to take one in the first round, because nobody else is drafting one again until the second round. And I think you're perfectly justified in drafting any of them first if you do that, but I wouldn't do it until the third round.
Well, and you just kind of, I don't know if you, I know, I'm sure you didn't really necessarily mean to, because we talk about this all the time, and for the last 10 years we've been doing this show, and we are coming up on our 10th season here of Fantasy Sports Review, but one of those things is like people expect somebody that had an increasing year the year before to come back and continue that increasing trend. But more often than not, Doug, you see an up spike and you see it go down. We've come to use the term, and Robbie's heard this term, a couple of years now, the term oscillators. Rather than going up, they go down. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. And it was a lot of it is for those reasons that Doug was saying earlier, is that defenses do have a tendency to take a guy that was successful the year before and then kind of key their defensive game plans around him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what happens is you'll find that if you draft a team, take the top fantasy players from 2 years ago, and if you draft according to that, you're going to draft better than half the other people, at least, because you're going to draft probably better than 2/3 of them just based on that, because they're drafting on only what happened last year.
Okay, I got a good running back question coming for you. So we're in the second round of the draft. Peter Madden again. We'll talk about him. He's a guy who took Rodgers in the first round. Takes Rashard Mendenhall with the second pick of the second round over running backs we're very well familiar with: Steven Jackson, Matt Forte, and Frank Gore. What do you think about taking Mendenhall that high? Is he really poised to have that great of a year, Robbie?
You know what? I think he is. Only because, and I'm not even saying this from last season, but 2 seasons ago, he had a heck of a year. He was a real catalyst on that Super Bowl to get the team to the Super Bowl this past season. He's going to get a lot of carries. He's so reliable with the football. He doesn't fumble that all. Well, according to Harrison, he fumbles a lot. His teammate, but Rashard Mendenhall does protect the football. You look at his last 2 seasons in Pittsburgh, gets a lot of touches, especially inside the goal line. You got to like that. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, say what you want about him. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So if you think about that, he doesn't turn the ball over that much. That gives Rashard Mendenhall more carries, more opportunities to score touchdowns. It's a good way to look at it.
All right, let's move on to a wide receiver question for Doug. Doug, we got Hakeem Nicks getting drafted ahead of guys like Greg Jennings and Larry Fitzgerald and Reggie Wayne. How is that possible?
I don't know. It's probably what I already mentioned, the whole one-year wonder phenomenon and people not paying attention to what people have done, the players have done over the course of the last few years, which is you have to take as a whole. And I still think Reggie Wayne's very valuable. What I wouldn't agree with here is, once again, taking LeGarrette Blount. I know he has a lot of potential, but I don't like to take one-year wonders in either of the first 2 rounds. I need proven players in both rounds, so I would definitely take somebody proven over LeGarrette Blount.
Okay, Doug, let's go ahead and examine this case study here. I mean, you're saying you wouldn't take LeGarrette Blount with that pick. Would you rather have a guy like Cedric Benson or Ahmad Bradshaw or Peyton Hillis?
It's possible, but personally, it would depend on my situation. But I'll probably go with a wide receiver with that pick instead, and go for maybe Deshaun Jackson or Brandon. Given that the top running backs are pretty much gone by this point, it's time to get a good, solid wide receiver.
And what do you guys think about Mike Williams being drafted there in the 3rd round by Adam Iser? Anyone?
You know what?
Above Dwayne Bowe?
That's shocking to me. I mean, again, you talk about a one-year wonder. Mike Williams.
Bowe or Williams?
Well, no. Dwayne Bowe had a heck of a season last year. 2 years ago, had a heck of a season.
He won people fantasy. Well,
right. Oh, absolutely. Well, that's true. And then Mike Williams, but had such a resurgence towards the end of that season. He is going to be on high on everyone's list. I'd say go ahead and let those guys draft him. Doug would totally agree with me on that. Let those rookies make that mistake by taking Mike Williams, because honestly, I think he's going to carry a lot of double teams. People are going to gear up for him. So you really don't know. You don't know how he's going to respond to having that great rookie season.
Well, yeah, the last guy that did that the year before that, the breakout receiver from that team was blanketed last year and made fairly a whimper. He's being drafted in the later rounds of the draft, and so I would say Tom Brady, Peyton Manning this is probably a good round. If you want to draft a quarterback early, look at that value. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks right there. And I probably wouldn't draft Jamie Eisenberg, but I don't know if he's related to Jesse Eisenberg either, which means, you might have some money. But moving on to round 4, this is where people are starting to take, some chances with some of these questionable players like Peyton Hillis and the law firm, Ben Jervis, Green Ellis, and these guys, Sean Green, these guys that seem to have some potential, but they're not really proven either. So this is kind of a wild card round to me.
Yeah, Montario Hardesty coming back from injury there in Cleveland. That's going to certainly affect Peyton Hillis's value. But then we come back to these guys that were overdrafted last year, a guy like Sean Green and a guy like Knowshon Moreno. I mean, is this the year that, okay, so they were overdrafted last year, so they've slid down the radar. Robbie, is your boy Sean Green to come back and be that top, 5 or 6, 7, 8 running back this year?
You know what? I don't see it because he didn't show me anything from last season to prove that. He had a great playoffs as a rookie, but then last season he kind of tanked. I don't know if it was because of the resurgence of LaDainian Tomlinson in the backfield, and he's still around. They also picked up a few other guys too. In the draft, so you don't know how he's going to respond. I'd say Sean Green, stay away from. If you can get this guy in the 5th, maybe 6th round, don't target this guy in the 4th round. There's so many good players that's out there that's still good to be had. I mean, you look at a guy like Ryan Matthews. All right, he was going to the first round.
Ridiculous.
We talked about it.
You liked him.
I liked him, but you know what? We did talk about how he could easily be a dud instead of fantasy stud, and now he's going to the 4th round. I think this is a guy you should definitely key on. I mean, has 1 full year under his belt. I mean, he does still remind guys. He's got plenty of that explosiveness. This is the real reason why they got LT. They got rid of LT is for this guy. So you don't know how he's going to do. And honestly, I think that Ryan Matthews comes back with and leads a resurgence in San Diego.
Will he have the bigger year than Beanie Wells this year? Robbie's favorite player from last year, take him to the 2nd round, Beanie Wells. We gotta give you shit about that one, man.
That's all right.
Let's move on to the next. The rest of this draft here. The one thing I want to say about the 4th round here is Antonio Gates. This is a guy, I know he has a very serious plantar fasciitis problem. It's basically the whole thing was torn. This is an issue as a runner that I know all about, and I just know this is going to be impossible for him to come back from maybe for the rest of his career. That could be really a career ending / hampering injury, and I think that all the days of the great Antonio Gates are over with. Moving on to the 5th round, guys. Now we're seeing some guys like Ryan Grant coming off a big injury, and people are starting to take quarterbacks and more tight ends, and a lot of Indianapolis Colts coming off the board here. What do you like and hate about this 5th round draft pick here, Doug Cook?
Okay, well, first of all, this is the first pick by Sergio Gonzalez. People have seen the previous pick. This is the first proven player that he's picked besides the quarterback. He has 3 one-year wonders, quarterback breed, which is good. A little bit early, first pick of 3rd round, but then he finally gets a proven player here. So he's getting on track. And certainly the run on tight ends continued in this round, but there is a little bit of upside to a couple of these players that could, this is where you start really getting value in the draft in the 5th round, where you can get somebody that, like Ryan Grant, that has a lot of upside, that could possibly break out. And, of course, Austin Collie could bounce back for a good season and so forth.
Okay, well, time out. I got to ask you a question then. What do you know about your boy down there with the Miami Dolphins, Daniel Thomas? Rob and I were talking about him before the show. How do you think he's going to fit into that Wildcat offense down there in Miami?
Well, certainly the pressure is on him. He played it at the start. He was an effective player at Kansas State. And, let's face it, the only other running back on the team now that has any NFL experience to mention is Reggie Bush, and we'll get to him in a minute. Other than that, the other players, on the team have a combined career of 24 NFL carries, and 23 of them are by one man. So we're talking about Reggie Bush and this guy Daniel Thomas, the rookie. They have to get it done. They're going to get the bulk of. They're going to get 90% of the carries and catches from the running back position. So he's either going to, it's boom or bust. He's either going to do great by virtue of having all these carries, or if their offense still struggles and they still have quarterback problems, then he'll bust.
And Robbie, what do you think about the chances of Austin Collie or Brandon? How about Brandon Lloyd coming back and having a big year this year?
I like Brandon Lloyd. I think he does come back,
especially with Orton kind of looking like he's gonna be the starter.
Yeah, you know what? If it's Tebow starting, I'd kind of stay away. But with Kyle Orton, he's put up big numbers in the past. Lloyd's still a guy that can stretch the field and really help a team out in the vertical passing game. Austin Collie's coming back from those concussions. For me, I
kind of wave this piece of paper on him. He could
and that's the thing. He's gonna have alligator arms going across the middle. That's just gonna come because of what happened. You can't really blame the guy for it. He's gonna brace himself a little bit, and it's gonna be a little tough for him to try to respond. He's got Pierre Garçon and Reggie Wayne in front of him. He's not gonna get the bulk of throws. I mean, he might commence a single coverage in that area in the slot, but he's not the same player that he was last year or 2 years ago.
Well, if you want to talk about round 6, I can tell you that I originally, by instinct, labeled Mark Ingram a wide receiver because I remember that he was a famed wide receiver in Miami. But Mark Ingram, the second, is here in the NFL too as a running back in the second incarnation. I think that's very interesting. He's being drafted pretty highly, I think, there for the 6th round.
But I think people are learning on drafting the rookie running backs. I mean, this is a rookie running back that's getting drafted in the 6th round rather than these overdraft guys at the end of the 1st and into the 2nd round. So people are learning here. But then you have a guy like Javid Best who was drafted in the 2nd round. He's slipped down into the 6th round. You see Joseph Adai. And this is the one that kind of blows me away here is Steve Johnson being drafted at the end of the 6th round. I mean, this guy at the start of last year was just freaking awesome. I mean, this guy was explosive. He made tons of plays. He had touchdowns that were called back. I mean, this guy is awesome.
He's great. And like you talk about a guy, especially in leagues that kind of reward you for those deep touchdowns. I would draft that guy in a 12-person league in the 5th round if I could.
Yeah, we got about 2 minutes left here, Doug. What do you see in the 6th round there? Anything else you'd say? Is Ocho Cinco going to do anything up there with the Patriots?
Well, you never know. I mean, I'm sure Belichick will get what he came from him for the first year, but he could just be a distraction as well.
Okay, well, listen, guys, we are running out of time here. We got through about half the draft. We thought we could get through the full draft. That never happens on the show. We have too much football to talk about. But that was a good primer. That was a good start to the show. We have lots of exciting stuff. We got Dustin Ashby from the World Championships of Fantasy Football. He'll be coming back on in a couple weeks. We usually have a couple of other things. We might be doing some exciting things that we can't tell you about right down the road here in a couple weeks. Doug will be joining us every week to give us his expert commentary from his undisclosed locations around the country. And Robbie will always be here as the old standby in studio. And we'll have tons of exciting weather girls and news girls for you guys to keep your eyes on with for the upcoming season. But I'm excited, you guys. All right, Robbie, good to see you again. And we'll see all you guys next time on Fantasy Football Review. Goodbye, everybody.